Welcome. My name is Lynette Johnson. I am one of the coordinators. You'll see that all of the coordinators are here tonight. And you're here for the summer 2012 Co-op Job Search Kickoff. If you're here for anything else, you are in the wrong place. So I also want to mention that the manager of the co-op program, Julie Bebbington, is here. She was one of the people that signed you in tonight. And we also have Lorraine Anderson, who's the team lead for our group. And to get us started, I'm going to play a video. Actually, I'm going to get Caesar to queue up a video. And this is the one that won the 2011 Co-op YouTube video contest. So last year, if you were on a work placement, you could submit a video and you could win an iPad too. And this is the winning submission from last year.
Hi, my name's Samantha Monroe. I am entering my third year of studying marketing at Carleton University, and I am currently taking part in the co-op program. I am the summer youth intern for the Economic Development, Recreation and Tourism Department of the prettiest little city in Canada, the city of Pembroke. My supervisor, Susan Ellis, is the manager of this department, and our offices are located here at the Pembroke Memorial Center. This is where I complete most of my daily tasks, such as replying to emails, creating personalized documents and brochures, and updating the city website with fun and exciting activities for the public. As youth intern, I'm considered an ambassador for the city. This means experiencing firsthand what Pembroke and the area has to offer so that I can help promote recreation and tourism. This includes whitewater rafting and ziplining as a day at the office. My job is to aid in the development of various programs to enhance community participation within the city of Pembroke, and also to help plan and execute a variety of special events that happen throughout the summer. These special events include the Canada Day celebrations, Communities in Bloom, and the annual Waterfront Festival. This festival is the city's biggest event that happens throughout the summer, and planning starts months in advance. I got to show my creative side when designing posters, ticket booths, and performer passes for the event. This event is 3 days in length, and this year featured hit Canadian artists such as Matt Anderson, Ashley McIsaac, and the Sam Roberts Band. Not only did I get to help out with everything that goes on behind the scenes, I also got to work backstage and meet the performers. My summer was filled with many new experiences, working with great colleagues, meeting new people, and obtaining knowledge that will be helpful for my future career in business. And that's why my co-op is the coolest. Now I'm going to rock out to Sam Roberts.
Okay, so by now you should have received an email from Amanda Doby, who is our program administrator, to let you know that you've been admitted into the Co-op 2012 summer term. And hopefully most of you have followed the instructions and have set up your account, and you have put up some documents. So you should have put up at least a cover letter, a template, and a template of your resume. In order to apply for any jobs, you're going to have to put that together into a package, and we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to go through and do a brief presentation, the PowerPoint presentation here, and then we're going to have some experienced co-op students who are going to form our panel, and you'll have an opportunity to ask them some questions. And finally, we're going to have a breakout session, and you'll be divided into your different areas, different disciplines, and you'll be with your co-op coordinators, and you can ask questions then. So I'd ask that if you have any questions about the logistics, about the things that I'm going to be talking about, if you can hold those questions until the breakout session, I'd really appreciate it, okay? So we're going to do an overview of everything, including the start of the program, which is academic status and co-op program fees, right through to graduation requirements. So that's sort of the front-end loading of the co-op process. And then there's the middle section, which is searching for work, which is what you're about to embark upon. And that'll include searching for your job, applying for jobs, interviews and offers. And then we'll also look at phase 3, which is when you're at work, what you have to do in terms of course registration and what's involved in site visits. And at the very end of your term, there are things called work term report and work term evaluation. So we're going to talk about that as well. So you have to be registered full-time during every study term that you're in co-op. You are permitted to be part-time at the very end of your co-op work terms. Once you've completed the number of work terms that are required, you can be part-time status for that final academic period. You're not eligible for a co-op work term after your last academic term, and what that means is you have to end on an academic term. You can't end on a work term. So some people, for example, they say, well, if I get the optional work term after year 1, why can't I just do the summer after year 2, the summer after year 3, and the summer after year 4? Well, it doesn't work that way because you have to end on an academic term. Okay, you have to maintain the required program average. For most programs, that's 8.0 CGPA. For some, it's a little higher. Fees, the most unpopular conversation topic. There are 2 areas of fees. The first area is the study term fee. The second area is the work term fee. All undergraduates pay the study term fees. They're normally applied to your account in the fall and winter terms of both second and third year. There may be some exceptions to the rule, but in general, that's how the study term fees are applied. So there's a total of 4 of those. And then there's also the work term fees. Those are only applied when you're out working. So once you secure a position, you are going to be automatically registered in the appropriate work term report course, and the corresponding work term charge will be applied to your account. And as you say, the fee is applied during each 4-month work term. So at the bottom, you'll see the total cost there. So the total cost to participate will range between $2,730 and $3,120, and that depends on how many work terms you have in total. Participation in the co-op process involves a work-study sequence, and each work term is 4 months in duration, and it's full-time. Each program has its own work-study pattern, and that's based on when the courses are offered in your particular program. So there are some students that can go out for 4 months, some students that go out for 8 months, 12 months, 16 months, and the combination is unique to your particular program. You must follow that sequence, and the rationale being that we've already worked it out with the department in terms of when the courses are offered, so it's in your best interest to follow that sequence. There may be some latitude, but again, that's on a case-by-case basis. You can ask questions about that during the breakout session as well. Work permit. Do we have any international students? Okay, so I want you to make sure that you have picked up the letter of support from our office. There is still a handful of students that you were emailed last fall. There's still a handful of students who haven't picked up that letter. This is in order for you to get your co-op work permit, which is different from your off-campus work permit. It's an absolute requirement, and we have to start the ball rolling now so that you can make sure that your security clearance and the permit and everything is all done in time for you to go to work. The last point on here is to visit the ISSO, the International Students Association website, for instructions on how to apply for the work permit. Withdrawal from co-op. Should it happen that co-op is not for you, it is possible to withdraw, but you cannot withdraw when you're on a work term. It has to be, you have to complete that work term, and then you can request to have the co-op option withdrawn from your transcript. And you have to complete a formal request, and that can be done on the website and submitted as well on site. The graduation requirements is you have to complete 3 or 4, depending on what your specific discipline requirements are, 3 or 4 complete satisfactory work terms, and that will allow you to graduate with the cooperative education designation. These are 4 non-academic credits. Communication. This is probably the most important thing for the co-op coordinators. And that is, once you go out into your workplace, please make sure that you continue to keep in touch with us. Often we know it's once you're out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, but it's very important for you to make sure that you check in with your Carleton Connect account on a regular basis and keep us up to date on how things are going from your perspective, and also so that we can make contact. Job search and applications. You want to make sure that you read every job description carefully. When you're going through the different job listings, you may see the name of an employer and you may think that you have no interest in working for that employer. I would caution you to try to have an open mind about all the listings that are there. They're being posted to you. If you can view them, then they're being posted to you as a discipline. And so take the time to read through the job description. A company that you may never have thought of working for, you may just find that the particular opportunity they're offering is of interest. You want to communicate with your co-op coordinator if you are seeking, or if you find, in particular, if you find a co-op position outside of the co-op listings. And that points out one particular part of your job search, and that is that the listings that we have in the co-op office are one approach, but you should have many irons in the fire. So you should be looking at websites for companies for which you have an interest, talking to people in your network, so whether that's friends, family, friends of family, professors. And if you do apply for a position that is posted on the co-op listing and you're invited for an interview, you must accept the interview. So leading from that, in terms of interviews and offers, you may not decline an interview for any job applied to on the co-op services portal or My Career. The reason for that is that, or from that, we want to make sure that you're only applying to jobs for which you have a bona fide interest. So we do want you to apply for a number of jobs, but we don't want you to take the scattergun approach and apply for absolutely everything, because if you are invited to an interview, you must accept that interview. If you are offered a job, you have one decline. So you may decline one offer, and after that, the next job that is offered to you, you must accept. The reason for that is to be fair and equal to both employees and employers, so that we're not having them go through the process of offering a job being declined over and over again. Once a job offer has been accepted, then you won't be required to take any further interviews. The placement people will take care, if you have any outstanding interviews, they'll take care of that. But you're not permitted to continue seeking. So once you've got your position, then you can sit back and relax until May. So you've accepted a job offer, now what happens? As I said earlier, we will automatically register you in the appropriate work term course. And the work term courses are not electives, they're non-academic credits. You may take up to 1/2 credit while you're working. You may take a half course during a work term, but it has to be after work hours, so it's not to interfere with your work term itself. If you're receiving OSAP or you're receiving a bursary of any form, then I would recommend that you check with the awards office to see if it has any effect on whether you have to defer your award. And you have to complete all of your work terms prior to your final academic term. I already mentioned that, so you have to end on an academic term. While you are out working, if you're working in the Ottawa area, then you will be visited by your co-op coordinator. So in order for us to come and see you, we have to have the details in terms of contacting your employer and where you're working. And so that's the first part. You have to complete the work term record, which is found in the same location as where you're applying for your jobs, and that's on My Career. So if you complete your work term record, and that provides us with the contact information, that allows us to contact your supervisor, set up a time that's agreeable with them, and then you'll be notified of the date and time of the visit. And we ask that you be prepared to discuss your work term progress with your coordinator and maybe have some questions. And if you have something that you're working on, we are always interested in seeing what exactly you're involved with. So that's the kind of preparation that you would have to do. Your work term reports are required at the end of every 4-month term. So you have to submit a work term report, and that goes directly onto WebCT. And it's marked by your faculty advisor. and you will get either a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory grade. You must get a satisfactory grade to continue in co-op. If you get an unsatisfactory grade, you will have an opportunity to resubmit your report. And if you are on a work term that lasts longer than 4 months, which there's only a couple of people, I think, here that would run into that situation, but you would still be required to do a report at the end of the first 4 months. It would just be an interim report. It's a 2-page versus the full work term report. Your work term evaluation happens at the same time that you submit your work term report. And that's an evaluation on your performance, and it's completed by your supervisor, and it's submitted online. You also have the option, if your supervisor is more comfortable, to print off the review and fax it in or scan it and send it in as an attachment. We just like to remind you that you're responsible for conducting yourself in a professional manner. Our employers treat our co-op students like junior employees. They don't treat them like summer students, and so we expect that that's the way that you're going to be performing and conducting yourself. And the performance standards, as we mentioned here, are no less than what would be expected of other employees. We have a group of frequently asked questions that I'm going to go through because you probably have some questions rolling around in your brain. So hopefully these will knock off a few of those, but as I mentioned earlier, if you could save any other questions that you have for the breakout sessions, you will also be given an opportunity to ask the panel members some questions about their experiences. And so we'll start with the first one, which is, where can I see posted jobs and how do I apply? So we mentioned that earlier, that you're going to review the jobs that are posted. You submit your application documentation all through My Career. And if you have visited the site often enough, you may realize that there are tabs at the top of the screen, and so you're going to look for the Co-op Services tab. We've tried to simplify things by having a quick search. We're still working with that, refining it, so that should be a one-button search for you. If you do run into any difficulties at all, then just contact your co-op coordinator. How many jobs should I apply to? That's a question that is often asked. There is no magic number. I would, as I said earlier, I would make sure that I apply for a number of positions because you're going to increase your probability of being asked for an interview by applying to a number of positions. But again, keep in mind that you only want to apply to those jobs for which you have a bona fide interest. What should I do if I'm not being selected for interviews? As a first step, when students come to me and say that they've applied to 30 positions and they've had absolutely no nibbles, I would consider having my resume reviewed if I were them. And that can be done through our Career Services, which is the sister office to our office. It's at 401 Torrey. And you can go on the Career Services website to see when times are available. They also have some drop-in hours. So that would be the first step that I would look at. And you really must have a competitive resume in order to be asked for an interview. The second part of that, though, is don't give up. And I know that we've had a few students already who are concerned that there aren't enough jobs. They're not seeing enough jobs. This is January, and jobs will be posted right up until the end of May. And in fact, we were placing students last summer into the month of May, and some even started as late as June. So it's a rolling posting. It is not a matching system. We have a large group of jobs that open in January that close at the end of this month, and then after that we will have a continuous posting, and they will be up for a shorter period of time, but you theoretically could have a new job every day posted. So the bottom line is to make sure that you're checking your My Career site every day. I would start off the day doing that, and not to give up. The second question on here, what do I do if I don't find a co-op position? Well, if you are supposed to be on a work term, and let's say it's a summer term, then you can certainly be finding yourself a summer job. But if it is if it's a possibility for you, then you need to be taking that term as a study term, completing the term, and then going back at it the next time around. The system is set up so that the number of terms that you need, there are more possible terms that you can work in than the number of terms that you need. So it's not like if you miss a term that you've blown your whole co-op process. So we keep that in mind when we're setting up the work-study pattern as well. What if I find a co-op job through a self-directed search? And I mentioned that earlier as well. And so you just need to contact your co-op coordinator and provide a job description and then the contact information for the employer. I usually ask for a job description and a copy of the letter of offer. The reason for that is that it's security both for you and for us. The job description tells us that the job that you're doing is somehow related to your studies. And the letter of offer shows us that it's a bona fide offer of a position. We don't want to see, there may be someone who said, oh sure, you know, come and talk to me, I've got a job for you, and then when you show up on their doorstep in May and they say, oh well, you know, things have been really tough and we really don't have the work for you. So when we're looking at a job description, we also have to make sure that it's full-time, that it's paid work, and that it is in your area of study. So those are the criteria to allow it as a co-op placement. So what's next after tonight? Well, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we want to make sure that you have your resume and your grades page uploaded. And you'll need to create a package with those documents, so your resume/grades page and your cover letter, and that's what you'll use to create a package to apply to any jobs. Resources are available using the resources section of My Career, so going through the Co-op Services tab. And then you can also check out what services, workshops, and sessions are available. There's resume review, there are mock interviews, there are all kinds of resources available to you free, and I would really highly suggest that you take advantage of those. You can make yourself as comfortable as possible in an interview situation by taking a couple of mock interviews, or making sure that you have your resume as competitive as possible by having at least one or more people have a look at it, and one of those people could be through the career services. We also want to encourage you to contact our office and or your co-op coordinator with any additional questions. This is the beginning of a really interesting journey for you, and we want to make sure that we help guide you along the way. We can't do the work for you, but we can certainly help point you in the right direction. Okay, so the next portion, because I'm not going to let you ask any questions, is we're going to have the panel of students, as I mentioned, a panel of students who have already been on co-op placements, who are going to share their experiences with us. And there's a series of questions that Katie LeBlanc, who is another one of our co-op coordinators, who has the BCom group, and they're going to come up now, and here's Katie.
So we have a great range of students here this evening, some who have done one co-op work term, some who have done 3 or even more, I believe. So what I'll start by doing is asking each of our student panelists to take about 2 minutes to introduce yourself. If you could just give your name, your program, your year of study, and talk a little bit about where you've done your co-op work terms. So Graham, do you mind starting things off?
My name is Graham Carbert. I'm a 4th-year communications student. I just finished my 3rd and last co-op work term at CBC Radio Canada. My 2 previous work terms were at Speed Skating Canada, and I guess that's my co-op story.
Hi, my name's Cody D'Entremont. I am 3rd year Public Affairs and Policy Management with a concentration in human rights. I just finished my first co-op work term in the summer of 2011, working for Northern Youth Abroad. It's a not-for-profit.
I'm Alex Hines. I'm in my 4th year of law, concentrating in law policy and government. I am currently working at the Privy Council office, and I've also completed a term with Aboriginal Affairs in Northern Development Canada.
Hey guys, I guess we're sharing a mic. My name's Chris Bailey. I'm in business and I'm majoring in marketing and management. I'm in 4th year. I've done 2 co-op terms so far, one at Industry Canada as an HR assistant and one at a place called Alcatel-Lucent in Canada as a recruiter. And I did a double co-op term in Canada.
Hi, I'm Rowan Shields and I'm a 3rd year history student, and I just finished up my first work term at Canada Revenue Agency in the Information Technology branch, where I was a technical editor.
Okay, great. So I'll start, and I'll ask each of you maybe to weigh in on this question. The panelists all know in advance what some of the questions would be, so hopefully you can each provide a little bit of a tip here. What I'd like to ask you is, given that these students are all starting their first co-op job search, is there one tip that you would offer these students who are just beginning their co-op experience?
When I started my co-op job search, I'm kind of bad with procrastinating, so I suggest to jump right into it. I thought the expectation of what employers were looking for might, in my mind, was probably a bit more critical on myself than what they would be, so just jump into it, look for things that you're interested in, and work off that. So.
Okay, thanks. Alex, do you want to go ahead? Oh, sorry.
I'd also suggest always stay positive. For my first term, I actually didn't end up getting a job, and so I was initially really disappointed, but I was able to secure one the second time around, and I learned from that experience of having to always put a little more, having to always put a lot of effort into the job search, and don't assume that something's going to come up for you too automatically.
Yeah, I can just add to that, because I did the co-op work term in recruitment, and I can say, like, I've seen a few co-op recruitment cycles from an employer's perspective, and the way it works is we probably, like, if we use this co-op term as an example, we probably hired like 15% of the folks in January is this month, right? Yeah, 35% in February, 35% in March, and another like 15% in April. So employers don't stop hiring. They're always hiring, even towards the end of the cycle, and I hope those percentages add up to 100. You guys can do the math. Oh, and an interview tip, because, yeah, that was like listed below the question that she asked. She provided us the questions in advance, as she said. An interview tip, it's funny because I think a few of us were on another panel that the co-op office ran a little while ago. And we were giving out interview tips, and the one I gave, it worked for a couple people in the room because they emailed me after and said, hey, you know, the tip that you gave worked. And that's confidence. That's sort of my interview tip. Whatever it takes for you to get confidence before going an interview, do it. Because what an employer looks for when they're, you know, looking through your resume is your skills. But then the interview is really for your personality to shine. So do whatever you have to do. Listen to, you know, Selena Gomez before. Like, whatever you have to do to get confident just for the interview.
Go ahead, Rob.
And I'll kind of add to that too. This is more from the resume and cover letter sort of standpoint. I was able to see on my term, like, for the student that replaced me, what the expectations were in terms of resumes and cover letters. And I would just have to say to really, you know, base yours on what you learned in Co-op 1000 with the templates, because they do really work. I mean, I do know that quite a few resumes, you know, that may have otherwise been qualified were turned away because of poor grammar, poor style, that sort of thing. So they do look at that kind of thing. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're crafting cover letters. And it is important to personalize as well.
I guess I'll finish it off by saying my first co-op work term, I only applied for one job on the Carleton, my co-op. My other application was an independent job search, and I was formerly a speed skater for 15 years, and their headquarters are in Ottawa. And it was under my nose the whole time, so I sent off an application and set off an independent work term by myself. Succeeded. I was there for 2 terms, so I can't stress enough to pursue other opportunities outside of the opportunities already on my co-op.
Great. And Graham, you mentioned you applied to about 2 jobs before you got, that's an extremely lucky statistic. Could each of you maybe talk a little bit about how many jobs you had to apply to before you were, say, offered an interview and then offered a job? Maybe should we start at the other end with Rowan?
So I probably applied to maybe like 8 to 10 jobs, probably all of the ones that sort of applied to my major-ish or that I thought I could maybe have a good crack at. And I got 4 interviews, I think, and I got an offer on my 3rd, so it was successful.
Yeah, me like the gentleman at the end of the panel here. Sorry, I forget your name. It's kind of rude. I don't know. I applied for 2 and I got the second one that I applied for, but I got lucky, and that's not something that I'd recommend that you do, because my friends were all surprised because they had applied for tens of jobs and they weren't as lucky as I was. So what I would recommend that you do is, take the jobs that you really care about, that you really want, and you really want to apply for. Take 10, 20, maybe even 30 jobs that you're really interested in and apply for those.
Yeah, I've fallen on both sides of the spectrum. In the first term, when I didn't get a job, I applied for close to 25 and didn't get I don't think I got a single interview. And then in my second time around, I applied for about 15, had a few interviews, and then finally got one on probably my 4th or 5th interview. And then this term, I ended up being really lucky and got offered the first job that I interviewed for. So
It was all that practice.
yeah, it definitely gets easier as you go along.
I had missed the first deadline for applications, so I was kind of in a rush. I then applied to about 7 job postings, and it was the last one that I applied to that I got an interview, and then I got that job. But some people might think that you're kind of fortunate that you only have to have 1 interview, but if you're looking for experience of being in interviews and stuff, it might be better to apply to more, and you also have the chance of getting a better job or more, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could speak to my second work term at CBC. Previously, I'd applied to 3 other positions for that work term. CBC was my last interview. Before that, I had a phone interview and then an in-person one. They totally caught me off guard. I thought I applied to too few, so I guess it really is that. Put your name out there.
Okay, great. Is there one thing that you would cite as being the most helpful, either strategy or tip in your own co-op job search experience? Something that assisted you the most in your job search? Alex, do you want to go ahead?
I'd say use the resources that you have at your disposal with the Co-op and Career Center. The mock interviews do wonders, and also these people, they really know what they're doing with the resume help. When I first came in, they absolutely blew my resume apart, and it took me a few hours to get it back to what something it should be, and it did wonders.
I think it's important to keep an open mind in terms of like what your placement is actually going to be. Like you may not find like a perfect job posting that directly pertains to your major or your passions or whatever. Like for instance, in my own experience, I ended up working for Canada Revenue Agency Information Technology branch, and I don't really have a passion for taxes or computers, but it was valuable, and I was working as an editor, so there are diamonds in the rough. You may like pass something by at first glance, but on further examination it may turn out to be something that's worthwhile and could improve your own resume and your own skills. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, just to kind of add to what these folks said, use the resources of the co-op department, because really, like, you're paying $390, I think, for a study and work term, and that's a lot of money, but that money goes right to the co-op program. So, use the resources that they provide you, because everybody else is, or at least they should be. So.
What helped me, I think, might have been more just realizing that I'm not going to get a job at the UN coming out of second year. I'm in human rights, so I want to, I guess, go somewhere in that direction. So you kind of have to bring yourself back down to what your skill sets are, what your interests are, and just work off of that. And the UN job will come later in your life.
I guess my tip would be, you know, even before you get accepted or invited to an interview, is do some backup research on where you're applying. You know, eventually you'll make it to an interview, and during then, any kind of knowledge you have about, you know, the department or what even the company does is going to pay off, even in casual conversations before and after the interview. Just showing that you've actually spent some time and looked into what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that's probably the #1 piece of feedback we get from employers when they do give us feedback on the interviews that take place with students. They often will evaluate the individual interviewees on various criteria, and one of them is the amount of preparation that they saw you had done before the interview. So make sure before you set foot in that interview that you have done some research on the opportunity and the organization that you're going to be talking to. For those of you who sort of maybe haven't commented on interviews yet, is there anything you would comment on as far as advice for students as far as going into co-op interviews?
At my job, I was fortunate enough to help Northern Youth Abroad receive applications for another job posting in the summer. So I sat down and did some interviews with some candidates. One thing that was very noticeable was that some people kind of came on too strong. I know people are probably very nervous when they come in, but they kind of, people do funny things in interviews, that's one thing. But just be yourself. It's also about showing what your skill set is, but it's also showing that you have a good organizational fit with that organization. So like your personality and stuff like that. It's not just all about your skill sets, a lot about your personality as well.
I can't stress enough either how important it is to do some background research on the employer is who's interviewing you. I'd say at least 8 times out of 10, the first question is, what do you know about our organization and what are you expecting out of this position? And there's been a couple times where I've just completely blanked out, and sometimes they don't even give you a second look after that.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, in all of the interviews that I did, I guess, for the government, they asked you, like, who is the current acting minister of this department or whatever. So that could really throw you if you hadn't, you know, prepared. Luckily, thankfully, I did know the answer, otherwise embarrassing. And then in another interview, I got the great question of, in your own words, can you describe what a policy is? So that one was too, that was a bit like, okay. So just thinking about stuff like that, like thinking about specific questions that they could ask relating to the department or company that they worked for. It might be good to just brush up on specifics as well as the general sort of mandate.
Any other comments on interviews?
Show up on time.
Yeah.
And remember the names of who interviews you. I mean, there's been times where I come at a complete blank of who I've been spending the last 20 minutes with, and it pays off for the ones that you actually get accepted for.
Okay. So there are a number of different job search strategies that, you know, you've all learned about as part of Co-op 1000. So networking, doing your own job search, applying to postings that are posted online at various sites. So what job search strategies can you each share that might help these students in seeking their first work term?
Oh, I would definitely recommend networking. And when I first started Co-op, when I heard the word networking, it was like, oh, I just thought like, you know, these cheesy little wine and cheese events, here, have my card, you know, that sort of thing. But that's really not what it is, because I'm sure everyone, all of you probably know a few hundred people. And the beautiful thing about networking, of course, is those 300 people each know 300 people themselves. So you're always 1 or 2 steps away from these professionals working all over the city. So reach out to your network, even if it means, like, and I've actually done this, you know, see someone on LinkedIn that you're interested in, I'd message them and say, hey, you know, I'm a co-op student at Carleton, not interested in a job, I'm just interested in what you do. And just sit and have coffee with them. You know, look for opportunities to broaden your network, and also look for opportunities to use the network that you already have to find a great job. As in addition to the portal, because you'd be foolish not to look at the portal, because there's just so many opportunities there. But conversely, you'd also be foolish not to use your network at the same time.
Maybe you don't have to think of networking as a starting point within your first year, but I would like to work in the government, at Aboriginal Affairs or something like that. So last summer I started at Northern Youth Abroad. It's working with Northerners. So that's kind of a way in. So maybe this summer I could try to get a job with Aboriginal Affairs or something like that. So you can kind of look at what's available now and kind of think in the future as well of what might be available.
If I could speak towards more of the independent job search, when you're asking for a job, I mean, the companies that you're applying to have all had job applicants before. Make sure you come prepared with kind of a description of what co-op is, and especially the co-op program here at Carleton. I mean, with it's an established program. There's an office here that can assist you, both the students and the employers. So it gives some kind of confidence to the employers who have never heard of the program before to, take a leap and hire a co-op student.
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well. The co-op coordinators are always willing to follow up or help you follow up with an employer. If you've made some contact with an employer and think they might be interested in hiring you, but they just are not really sure what this whole co-op thing is about, we're glad to contact them or have them contact us to answer any of those questions to clear that up, because we obviously would like you to be employed with them. So, anyone else Alex, do you have anything to add as far as the strategies that worked best for you?
I myself, I concentrated more on the portal. I found in law, it's not very easy to get a self-directed search, because a lot of the, especially if you're looking in the private sector, a lot of lawyers have programs at their disposal where they can hire free students. So if you want to get paid, it's not exactly the best way to go that way. But in the public sector, I found that the portal is a very good tool for getting jobs.
I have kind of a question. Isn't there an option of getting kind of feedback after your interviews? Because I know that might help you in your next interviews in the next few weeks. So
right.
That's an option as well.
Thank you for posing a question. Yes, we do. Employers who come to campus to do interviews are given the option of filling out feedback forms for each of the candidates that they meet with. And there are a number of criteria that they'll evaluate you on: technical fit, interpersonal fit, level of preparedness for the interview, and so on. So if you're curious, usually we will share that interview feedback with you if we think there's some concrete information that will really help you. Or if you ask us, if you say, I've had a few interviews and nothing has really come through, has there been any feedback on those interviews? So do take the initiative to come to us and request that feedback. Your coordinator or your placement person would be willing to discuss that feedback with you if it's available. It's not always provided to us, but in those cases when it is, often it can be really helpful for you. So moving on to sort of time management, because we've all been talking about what a challenge it can be to be job searching while you're studying full-time. Is there anything that you can share as far as time management strategies? Maybe tell us a little bit about how much time you feel you spent on your job search and how you manage that time with your course load.
What I would recommend that you do, and this worked for me, something else might work for you, but this is what worked for me, is this is basic time management. Set aside 1 or 2 hours every week, non-negotiable. Sit down every week, look at the portal, and if you have time to spare, look at the websites of employers, RIM, Alcatel-Lucent. Take a look at the company I work for as well. Set aside those hours and don't budge on it. Take the time every week to look at the portal, because for the simple sake that the people to the left and the right of you are all doing the same thing, because you're in competition for the same jobs.
That's exactly what I did in my search, and it works out really well, because there's nothing more frustrating than watching the clock hit midnight while you're still trying to type out the last part of your cover letter. And it's happened more than once to me.
I guess to add to that, I mean, it may seem kind of daunting if you're planning to apply for 20 or 30 jobs to have to write an individualized cover letter for every position, because I mean that is quite a lot of work. But if you base it off the template that you learned in Co-op 1000, it does become a lot more manageable. So if you just sort of, I guess my advice would be sort of to refer back to the skills that you learned in the course. And once you have the one cover letter, it's much easier to sort of cut and paste or sort of just tailor what you already have. So don't be totally thrown by like a mountain of cover letters, this never-ending pile, because it can be managed. That's my advice.
I have a bit of trouble with writing, so it kind of takes me a bit longer. So I'm planning to set out some time to do that this semester. Also, it depends on what you are applying for. Like if you're really interested in the job application, it might take less time because you're very into it. You know what you want to say, what you want to get across to them. And others, you're going to have to maybe fight through it a little to get that interview.
And another, it's just a constant process as you go through, the 2 or 3 months where you're applying to jobs. It's easy to set aside, and as you're working on other classes, 3 hours a week or more as it comes to just spend working on your resume and looking at jobs that come up on the My Co-op or any other opportunities that you have, and setting that time aside just to build your resume. And also, as you're changing your resume for different applications, is just to keep a massive list, almost like a master resume that you can pull from.
I'd just like to reiterate that it's pretty important to change up your resume, because you should kind of select your skills towards the skills that they ask for you. You shouldn't just hand in a kind of generic resume, because it's important to, it kind of gets you thinking about what your skills are, so you kind of have this repertoire of what you have in your skill set. So change your resume every time. So yeah.
Good point.
And I think they probably still do this in Co-op 1000, is when they do the skills area of your resume. Like, that's a really good area to highlight the specifics for each position. So if you don't, if you're like, I'm not changing my entire resume for this one application, you can add different skills at the start under communication skills or customer service skills or whatever they are, and that's a good way to make it fresh and make it pertinent.
Did you all do a cover letter for every application?
Yes.
Because we were having a bit of not a debate, but a discussion about whether cover letters are necessary for each application. It's not explicitly stated in every job description, but when in doubt, it's best to include a cover letter with your application, and we do. That is something that we look for in the co-op applications. I don't, Chris, you had another opinion you might want to share. I don't know.
Yeah, I do have another opinion. I worked for a place called Alcatel-Lucent. It's a telecom company, and when we looked at resumes, I probably looked through thousands of resumes when I was there. We simply didn't have time to look at any cover letter. We just jumped right to the skills. If there's a cover letter, we just scrolled past. But then again, before that, I worked in the government where we sifted every cover letter for grammar mistakes so we can throw them in the rejected pile. So what I would do is, it's a good idea and a good recommendation to do a cover letter. But if you're applying for maybe a lot of technical positions, maybe don't focus on the cover letter as much as you would for a public sector position or a job that is much less technical.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say you're almost looking as a recruiter. You have 100 resumes in a pile on your desk, and you have to choose 3 or 4 candidates to interview. It's almost like you're looking for an excuse, for small reasons, large or small, to sort of put them in the garbage pile or the rejection pile, so that you can get down to the 3 that you can actually manage.
What I did is when I applied for jobs, separate the jobs into sort of 2 groups. The first group that you really, really want, and the second one that you wouldn't mind if you want. And the ones that you really, really want, the 5 or 6 of them that you really, really want, take the time to do a cover letter for those, and maybe just tailor your resumes for the other ones. I don't know if the co-op office would recommend something different, but if you're applying for a lot of technical positions, especially because technical positions receive hundreds, maybe even thousands of resumes for each position. Maybe that's something that's worth considering.
You were speaking to the, just now about the division between the jobs you really, really want and the ones that you wouldn't mind having.
Yeah.
And they previously mentioned you only get this one rejection. Now, do you take the gamble of accepting, rejecting one on the off chance you might get the other one, or do you take the sure thing? I guess it's a big debate you can have in that situation.
It definitely is. It's a personal question. Like, the answer might differ for everybody. I guess you could always question why you applied for the job in the first place, but what I'd recommend is taking a job if it's offered to you, because, and I think that's the decision that most people end up making, because it's for the simple fact that it's a sure thing, and if you don't, you might end up with nothing. But here's the thing about co-op is, you're going to get paid for any job that you go to, right? Fact, right? Every job on the portal will give you money at the end of the day. What you're there for is experience, and what you're there for is the title on your resume. So, if it challenges you, if it's good, if you applied for it in the first, I'd recommend taking it. But again, it's up to you, and it's a personal decision to make, I guess.
Also, the more time you spend working, the more confidence you might get in yourself that you will end up getting a job later on, and then you can become more picky with the jobs you apply to and the jobs you decide to take.
This might be the first full-time job that you guys might have, so you can't be too picky, and a lot of the jobs all the jobs at the job postings will offer you some skills, so you can't be too picky, I guess.
After applying to a job, how long did it take for you to get a response?
For me, it's ranged anywhere from a week to the last job I got, I even forgot I ever applied to it. It was about a month and a half. So it really depends on how busy they are over there, how quickly they get to their resumes.
Yeah, I'd say a week to a couple of weeks. It can range.
I picked mine up, we had interviews on Friday, and then it happened on the Monday after. So it can range completely from on the spot to, I guess, weeks.
Just one recommendation, sort of tangentially related to that, is follow up after an interview. Maybe I'd recommend a week after, because for the simple fact that nobody follows up. And if you're the one person that does follow up, you're really going to stand out. At Alcatel-Lucent, which was a cool job, I oversaw probably about 60, 70 jobs per term that we had to fill. And maybe out of those 60 or 70 jobs, for 3 co-op recruitment cycles that we hired for, maybe 2 or 3 people followed up after an interview. Like, it's really, really low. So there's a guaranteed way to stand out and, maybe get a bit more information if you get a response.
Yeah, I was just wondering about when you do get a job, like what the experience is in the first few weeks, like do they train you and what their opinion is of co-op students and stuff like that?
The first few weeks is a lot of reading. They're going to teach you everything that you need to know about the position and where you are. And as far as how they treat and how they look at co-op students, you're another person, you're another employee, and I always felt very included at every place I've been at, and there's no shortage of work. You're not going to be copying papers and getting coffees, if that's what you're asking.
If you are, your coordinator wants to know.
Just to add to that, especially if you're looking in the public sector, they're used to co-op students, and they know they've got a system down about how to keep you occupied. And they do treat you, at least in my experience, as just another employee. So you're not in some student dungeon or something like that. So.
I don't want to hog this. I'm sorry.
I think we'll have one last question after your comment, and
Okay.
then I'll ask you to comment on one other thing.
Sure. Yeah, you are treated with a ton of respect, because a lot of these places hire a lot of new grads as well, who are just 2 or 3 years older than you are. So even though you don't have much experience, some of you might, but probably most of you don't. Even though you don't have much experience, I've found with every place that I've worked to co-op at, both places, I was treated with an incredible amount of respect, and so were the other co-ops there. So nothing to worry about.
Okay.
So my dad's very old-fashioned, and he came to visit me in Ottawa and said that when looking for a job, he recommended that I print off resumes and covers letter and actually go to the workplace. Did any of you guys do that, or was it all online? And did you notice a difference if you did?
For the self-directed, I guess there's not really any other way to do it than that. Besides emailing in, you'd have to cold call. But for the ones on the portal, I just did straight electronic.
So I'm sorry to have to wrap up the questions after it was just getting warmed up, but we are on a tight time frame. So I'll ask each of you to talk a little bit about, looking back on the experiences that you've had and, thinking about where you were sitting, are you sitting in the same seat that these students are now, maybe a year or 2 years ago? Is there something that you wish you had known at that point before you started searching for your first co-op job that you would now like to share with these students? Go ahead, Graham.
Okay. Sitting, I guess, where you were about 3 years ago for me, I never thought that co-op would be more than just the 4 months. I always thought of it as 4 months at a time and kind of a clean cut after that. I've kept in contact with people that I've worked with for the past 2 years, and I'm sure I will see them again, whether if I work for them again or keep them up as business contacts. Also, I mean, a huge way to build references. I've got 2 references that I'm sure would never be, I could never find anywhere else elsewhere through co-op.
One thing that I would probably change that I didn't know last time was to be positive about all the job postings. I was kind of maybe too picky in the beginning, but every job that you go to, you're going to gain some type of experience. So
I would suggest not to expect that you're going to just fall into a job by applying. You're going to have to put in a real effort.
Yeah, it's true. I'd recommend that you look for jobs outside of your comfort zone, because everybody here probably has something that they're comfortable with that they do well at, but look for something that you might not do well at and try that, because you might end up loving it. I had no idea that I'd love recruitment as much as I did, and I didn't really want to accept it in the first place, but it was a job and I ended up loving it, and that's what I want to do now. So just look for stuff outside of what you might be looking for in the first place, and be open.
Yeah, I think I would say stay positive as well, like in terms of, your own chances. When I was starting my first job search, I was like, wow, this is kind of like a shot in the dark. I probably won't get anything, but I did, and you probably will too. You just have to, don't sell yourself short and understand that it could be done, even if you don't have like a wealth of public sector experience or even a full-time job before. So don't sell yourself short.
Great. Thank you all very much for helping all these students out tonight.